Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold window of the transport ship. Outside, the stars looked different than they did from Earth. Here in deep space, they seemed brighter and closer together. But what caught his eye was the massive space station growing larger by the minute. Harmony Point was huge. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing it in person was something else. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in the darkness. Lights sparkled along its edges like tiny diamonds. Ships of all sizes moved around it like busy insects. "First time away from home?" asked the girl sitting next to him. Her name was Lisa Park, and she was also 17. Like Jake, she was heading to the Galactic Youth Institute for the first time. "Yeah," Jake said. "You?" "My third year," Lisa replied with a smile. "I study alien biology. What about you?" "Engineering," Jake said simply. He was not much of a talker, but Lisa seemed nice enough. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Jake grabbed his single bag and followed the other students through the airlock. The station's gravity felt normal, which surprised him. He had expected it to feel different. The main corridor was busy with beings from many different worlds. Jake saw tall, thin creatures with blue skin walking next to short, round aliens with too many arms. A group of lizard-like beings stood near an information board speaking in clicking sounds. "Don't stare," Lisa whispered. "You'll get used to it." Jake tried not to look too obvious as he watched the different aliens. On Earth, he had only seen them in videos and pictures. Being surrounded by real aliens felt strange and exciting at the same time. They followed signs to the student dormitory. The halls were wide and clean, with windows showing views of space. Jake's room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, and a computer terminal built into the wall. His roommate was already there. The alien looked almost human, except for his pale skin and bright purple eyes. He was tall and moved with smooth, careful steps. "I am Kex from the Thalorian Republic," the alien said in perfect English. "You must be the human." "Jake Morrison," Jake replied, putting out his hand. Kex looked at it for a moment, then carefully shook it. "Humans are still new to most of us," Kex explained. "Your people only joined the galactic community 50 years ago." "That is very recent by our standards," Jake nodded. He knew humans were considered young compared to other space-traveling species. Some alien races had been exploring the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to fly. The next morning, Jake attended his first classes. The Academy of Worlds was unlike any school on Earth. Students from dozens of different planets sat together, learning about advanced science, alien cultures, and space travel. His engineering class was held in a large lab filled with equipment Jake had never seen before. The teacher was a spider-like creature with 6 arms and many eyes. She spoke through a translator device that made her voice sound mechanical. "Today we will study gravitational field generators," she announced. "These devices are standard on all spaceships. They create artificial gravity and can be used for defense." Jake listened carefully as she explained how the generators worked. The basic idea was simple enough. They bent space around a ship to create gravity. But the math was complex, and the engineering was even more complicated. After class, Jake stayed behind to examine one of the generators more closely. It was about the size of a large computer, with cables and pipes running in and out of it. The design looked efficient, but Jake could see ways it might be improved. "Interesting, is it not?" said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see another student watching him. This alien was different from the others he had met. He was tall and elegant, with silver skin and golden eyes. His clothes looked expensive, and he carried himself like someone important. "I am Prince Zephyr Kolthan of the Velkari Empire," the alien said. "And you are?" "Jake Morrison," Jake replied. "Ah, a human." Prince Zephyr's voice had a tone that Jake did not like. It sounded like the prince thought humans were not very important. "Tell me, human Jake, what do you think of our gravitational technology?" "It seems well designed," Jake said carefully. Prince Zephyr laughed, but it was not a friendly laugh. "Well designed? This technology is thousands of years old. Your species could not even dream of creating such devices." Jake felt his face get hot, but he kept his voice calm. "You're probably right. Probably." The prince's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Human, your people were still hitting rocks together when mine were crossing between stars. Do not pretend you understand technology that is far beyond your primitive minds." Several other students had stopped to watch. Jake noticed that most of them were aliens, and they seemed amused by the prince's words. He felt embarrassed and angry, but something told him not to argue. "You're the expert," Jake said quietly. Prince Zephyr smiled in a way that made Jake's skin crawl. "Indeed I am. Perhaps you should focus on simpler subjects. Leave the advanced engineering to those capable of understanding it." The prince walked away, followed by a group of other alien students. Jake heard them laughing as they left. Lisa appeared at his side looking angry. "What a jerk," she whispered. "Don't listen to him, Jake. The Velkari think they're better than everyone else." Jake nodded but said nothing. He looked back at the gravitational generator, studying its design with new interest. The prince was right about one thing. Human technology was much simpler than this. But simple did not always mean worse. That night, Jake lay in his bed thinking about the day. Prince Zephyr had embarrassed him in front of other students. Part of him wanted to prove the prince wrong, to show that humans were not as primitive as the aliens thought. But another part of him remembered something his father had told him before he left for the academy. "Son," his father had said, "sometimes the smartest thing you can do is keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. You learn more by listening than by talking." Jake decided to follow his father's advice. He would watch and learn. He would study the alien technology until he understood it completely. And maybe, if he was patient and smart, he would find a way to prove that humans belonged here among the stars. The academy was full of the brightest young minds from across the galaxy. Jake was just a 17-year-old kid from Earth. But he was determined to show that being young and human did not mean being weak or stupid. Outside his window, the stars continued to shine in the endless darkness of space. Jake fell asleep planning his next day in class, eager to learn everything he could about the amazing technology around him. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's first day at the academy. He had settled into a routine of classes, studying, and quiet observation. He spent most of his free time in the engineering labs learning how alien technology worked. Jake discovered that he had a gift for understanding complex machines. While other students struggled with the mathematical formulas, Jake could see how the pieces fit together in his mind. It was like solving a puzzle that made perfect sense once you understood the pattern. The gravitational field generators fascinated him most. During late-night study sessions, Jake found ways to improve their efficiency. Small changes to the internal wiring could increase power output by 20%. Adjusting the field harmonics could reduce energy consumption by 15%. He kept these discoveries to himself. After his encounter with Prince Zephyr, Jake had learned to be careful about showing off his ideas. The other students already saw humans as newcomers who did not belong. He did not want to give them more reasons to dislike him. Lisa often found him working alone in the lab after midnight. "You're going to burn out if you keep this up," she warned him one evening. "I'm fine," Jake replied, not looking up from the generator he was modifying. "This stuff is actually pretty simple once you understand the basic principles." "Simple?" Lisa laughed. "Jake, this technology took the Velkari 3,000 years to develop. Our professors have been studying it for decades." Jake finally looked up. Maybe they're thinking about it wrong. Before Lisa could ask what he meant, an announcement echoed through the lab. "All students report to the main assembly hall. The war game simulation will begin in 1 hour." Jake had been looking forward to this day. Once each semester, all students participated in a major military simulation. They were divided into teams based on their home species and given a challenge to solve. This time, they had to design defenses for a space colony under attack. The assembly hall was huge, with curved walls that showed a view of the stars outside. Students from dozens of worlds filled the seats, chattering excitedly in many different languages. At the front of the room, Commander Alex Torres stood waiting for quiet. Commander Torres was one of only 3 humans on the Academy's teaching staff. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. Jake respected him because Torres never tried to make excuses for humanity's short time in space. He simply worked harder than everyone else to prove humans belonged there. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all genders," Torres began, "today's simulation will test your ability to think under pressure. You will have 4 hours to design and build a defensive system. Your colony will then face waves of attacking ships controlled by our computer." He gestured to a large screen that showed a 3D model of a space station. "This is Colony 7, a mining outpost on the edge of known space. It has basic shields and weapons, but nothing that can stop a serious attack. Your job is to improve its defenses using the equipment and materials we provide. The rules were simple. Each team got the same resources: metal, electronics, power generators, and standard weapons. They could design anything they wanted as long as it could be built in 4 hours with the available materials. Jake joined the human team, which included Lisa and 8 other students. Their team leader was a senior student named Ryan Clark. Ryan was smart and confident, but Jake noticed he seemed nervous around the alien teams. "Okay, team," Ryan said as they gathered in their assigned workspace. "We need to be realistic about this. We're competing against species that have been building war machines for thousands of years. Let's focus on simple, proven designs." Jake raised his hand. "What if we tried something different? I've been studying the gravitational generators, and I think we could modify them to create a more effective shield system." Ryan shook his head. "Too risky, Jake. We can't afford to experiment with untested ideas. Let's stick with standard human military doctrine." The human team spent the first hour planning a conventional defense system. They would build multiple shield generators around the colony, supported by missile launchers and energy weapons. It was a solid plan, but nothing special. Meanwhile, Jake watched the other teams work. The Valkyrie team, led by Prince Zephyr, was building something that looked like a work of art. Their equipment hummed with psychic energy as the prince coordinated his team's efforts with his mind. The Thalorian team was constructing layer after layer of defensive barriers. The insect-like Zephyron were building swarms of tiny defensive drones. Each team had a unique approach based on their species' strengths. Halfway through the building time, Jake could not contain himself any longer. While the rest of his team assembled standard shield generators, he quietly began modifying one of the spare units. He rewired the internal circuits and adjusted the field harmonics, just as he had practiced in the lab. "Jake, what are you doing?" Lisa asked, noticing his work. "Just making some improvements," Jake replied softly. "This won't hurt our main defense, but it might give us an edge." By the time the 4 hours ended, Jake had successfully modified 3 of the generators. His changes were subtle. Most people would not even notice them. But if his calculations were correct, they would make the shields much more efficient. The testing began with the simplest attacks. Wave after wave of computer-controlled ships attacked each colony. The weakest defenses fell quickly, eliminating several teams in the first few rounds. The human team's conventional shields held up well at first. Their design was solid, if unimaginative, but as the attacks grew stronger, Jake could see they would not last much longer. "Switch to the modified generators," Jake whispered to Ryan. "Are you crazy?" Ryan hissed back. "We don't know if those things even work properly." "Trust me," Jake said. Ryan hesitated, then shook his head. "Too risky. We're doing fine with the standard equipment." The next wave of attacks hit harder than any before. The human shields flickered and sparked under the assault. Across the room, Jake watched Prince Zephyr's team easily deflect the same attacks with their psychically enhanced defenses. When the wave ended, the human team had survived, but barely. Several of their shield generators were damaged and working at reduced power. "We need those modifications now," Jake said urgently. This time, Ryan agreed. They quickly swapped in Jake's modified generators just as the final wave began. The attacking ships came from all directions, firing weapons that could destroy a real space station. The modified shields came online with a soft hum. Jake held his breath as energy beams and missiles struck the defensive barriers. But instead of weakening, the shields seemed to grow stronger with each hit. Jake's modifications were working perfectly. "Impossible," he heard someone say. Jake turned to see Prince Zephyr staring at the human colony's defenses. The Valkyrie team's shields were holding, but they showed signs of strain. Meanwhile, the human shields glowed brighter and more stable than ever. When the simulation ended, the results shocked everyone. The human team had achieved the highest defensive efficiency rating of any team. Their modified shields had not only survived the final wave, they had grown stronger during the attack. Prince Zephyr stood up from his team's control station. His golden eyes were blazing with anger and confusion. He walked over to the human team's workspace and pointed at Jake's modified generators. "What is this?" he demanded loudly. "These are not standard gravitational field generators." The entire hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Jake, who suddenly felt very small and alone. He looked up at Prince Zephyr's furious face and tried to think of what to say. "I made some small improvements," Jake said quietly. "Improvements?" Prince Zephyr's voice echoed through the hall. You think you can improve technology that your primitive species barely understands? This is impossible. These modifications violate the fundamental principles of gravitational field dynamics. The prince used his psychic abilities to examine Jake's work more closely. Jake felt a strange tingling in his head as the alien's mental powers probed the modified generators. Other students gathered around, watching the confrontation with interest. Look at this crude wiring, Prince Zephyr announced, pointing at Jake's modifications. And these field adjustments make no sense according to proper engineering principles. How embarrassing that the Academy allows such amateur attempts at real technology. Some of the alien students began to laugh. Jake felt his face burn with shame and anger. He wanted to explain how his modifications worked, to prove that they were not crude or amateurish. But when he opened his mouth, no words came out, you see? Prince Zephyr continued, his voice full of contempt. The human cannot even explain his own work. These apparent improvements are nothing more than lucky accidents. Primitive trial and error, not real engineering. Jake looked around the hall. Even some of the human students seemed embarrassed by the attention. Commander Torres was watching from the back of the room, his face unreadable. You may be right, Your Highness, Jake said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The words felt like poison in his mouth, but Jake forced himself to say them. He walked over to his modified generators and began disconnecting the improvements he had worked so hard to create. Jake, what are you doing? Lisa asked in shock. The prince is right, Jake replied, not meeting her eyes. I was just guessing. These modifications don't really work, Prince. The weeks following the simulation were difficult for Jake. Word of his public humiliation had spread throughout the academy. Students who had never spoken to him before now whispered and pointed when he walked by. Some seemed sympathetic, but most appeared amused by the human who had tried to outsmart a Velkari prince. Jake changed his behavior completely. In engineering class, he gave standard answers to every question. When assigned projects, he built exactly what the textbooks recommended, nothing more. His grades remained good, but his work showed no creativity or innovation. His professors noticed the change. Professor Zenthara, the spider-like teacher of his engineering class, kept Jake after class one day. Your recent work has been adequate but uninspired, she said through her translator device. Before the simulation, your assignments showed promise. What has changed? Jake looked at the floor. I realized I was trying to do things beyond my understanding. I'm focusing on learning the basics properly now. Professor Zenthara's many eyes studied him carefully. I see, that is unfortunate. Your earlier work suggested you might have an intuitive grasp of field mechanics that even advanced students lack. I think you were mistaken, Professor, Jake replied. I'm just a human student trying to keep up. The professor said nothing more, but Jake could feel her watching him as he left the classroom. Lisa was more direct in her concerns. She cornered Jake in the cafeteria one evening, sitting down across from him at his usual empty table. This has gone on long enough, she said firmly. You're acting like a different person. That prince made you afraid to be yourself. Jake pushed his food around on his plate. Maybe this is who I really am. Maybe what happened before was just me trying to be something I'm not. That's garbage and you know it, Lisa shot back. Your modifications worked, Jake. They worked better than anything else in that simulation. You proved humans can innovate just as well as any alien species. And look where it got me, Jake replied, embarrassed in front of the entire academy. Maybe it's better if I just focus on learning what I'm taught instead of trying to invent new things. Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Fine. If you want to give up, that's your choice. But I know what I saw that day. You created something amazing, and no arrogant alien prince can change that fact. She left him sitting alone at the table. Jake finished his meal in silence, ignoring the glances and whispers from other students. But Lisa was wrong about one thing. Jake had not given up. He had simply changed his approach. Every evening after classes, Jake went to the academy's library. The building was huge, with sections devoted to the knowledge of dozens of different worlds. Most students only visited the areas related to their studies, but Jake explored everywhere. He started with Velkari history. Their empire was one of the oldest in the galaxy, spanning thousands of star systems. They had been exploring space for over 10,000 years, developing technology that most other species could barely understand. The Velkari were born with psychic abilities that allowed them to link their minds together. This mental connection made them incredibly effective in space battles. Their ships could coordinate perfectly, moving like a single organism instead of separate vessels. Jake read about the Valkyrie military record. In 400 years of spacefaring warfare, they had never lost a major fleet engagement. Their psychic coordination and advanced shield technology made them nearly unbeatable in combat. Nearly unbeatable. That word caught Jake's attention. He dug deeper into military history, reading classified reports that most students never saw. The Academy's library had access to databases from across the galaxy, including records of every known space battle. Jake found what he was looking for in a report about a border skirmish 20 years earlier. A small Valkyrie patrol had been defeated by pirates using unconventional tactics. The report was brief and classified, but it mentioned something interesting. The pirates had used rapid, chaotic attack patterns that overwhelmed the Valkyrie psychic coordination network. When too many targets attacked at once, the mental links between Valkyrie ships became unstable. Their greatest strength had become a weakness. Jake spent hours reading about psychic field mechanics and neural network theory. He learned that Valkyrie mental connections worked by creating resonance patterns in subspace. These patterns allowed instant communication across vast distances, but they could be disrupted by certain types of interference. The more Jake learned, the more he understood. Every advanced system had weaknesses, especially systems that depended on perfect coordination. The Valkyrie had become so dominant that they rarely faced opponents who understood how to exploit these weaknesses. But Jake was beginning to understand. He also studied the technical specifications of Valkyrie warships. Their records were supposed to be classified, but the Academy's research database had detailed information available to advanced students. Jake spent nights memorizing shield frequencies, weapon power levels, and sensor capabilities. Lisa noticed his new research habits. She found him in a remote section of the library one evening, surrounded by technical manuals and historical documents. "What are you really doing, Jake?" she asked, sitting down beside him. Jake looked up from a manual about subspace field theory. "Learning. Learning what? This stuff looks way more advanced than anything we're covering in class." Jake gestured at the documents spread across the table. "Did you know the Valkyrie have never lost a fleet engagement in over 400 years? Their psychic coordination and shield technology make them nearly unbeatable in space combat." "I know about their military record," Lisa said. "Everyone does." "What's your point?" Jake's eyes had a look Lisa had never seen before. It was not anger, but something colder and more calculating. "Every system has weaknesses, Lisa. Even the most advanced ones. Especially the most advanced ones." "You're scaring me a little," Lisa admitted. "What are you planning?" Jake closed the manual he had been reading. "Nothing specific. I'm just trying to understand how things really work. The textbooks only tell you the basic principles. The real knowledge is in the details they don't teach in class." Lisa looked at the pile of technical documents. "Jake, some of this stuff is classified military information. How are you even accessing it?" "The Academy's research database has everything," Jake replied. "You just have to know where to look. Most students never bother to dig deeper than their assigned reading." "But why are you studying Valkyrie military technology? What does this have to do with your engineering studies?" Jake began gathering up the documents. "Know your enemy." "Enemy? Jake, these are fellow students, not enemies." Jake paused in his cleaning up. "Prince Zephyr didn't treat me like a fellow student. He treated me like something inferior that needed to be put in its place." "So you're planning some kind of revenge?" "I'm planning to be ready," Jake said quietly. "The next time someone tries to humiliate me for being human, I want to have options." Lisa watched as Jake returned the documents to their proper sections. His movements were careful and methodical, like everything he did these days. The laughing, curious boy she had met on her first day seemed to have been replaced by someone much more serious. But Jake's research was not limited to the library. He had also begun working on new projects in secret. Late at night, when the engineering labs were empty, Jake would slip inside and work on modifications that went far beyond anything he had attempted before. His earlier gravitational field improvements had been simple compared to what he was developing now. Jake was designing something completely new, something that combined human engineering principles with detailed knowledge of alien technology. The work was slow and careful. Jake could not afford to be caught experimenting again. He used equipment in abandoned sections of the station, areas that were rarely visited by students or teachers. His new project required understanding not just how Valkyrie technology worked, but how it could be countered. Jake was developing adaptive systems that could learn and evolve during operation. Instead of trying to match alien coordination, he was creating technology that became stronger when faced with complex, organized attacks. The irony was not lost on him. The very chaos and unpredictability that aliens saw as human weaknesses were becoming the foundation of his new designs. One night, while working in a forgotten maintenance bay, Jake was surprised by a visitor. Commander Torres appeared in the doorway, watching Jake work with curious eyes. "Interesting project," Torres said, examining Jake's modifications. "Mind if I ask what you're building?" Jake tensed, ready to disassemble his work just as he had done during the simulation, but something in Torres's expression stopped him. "An adaptive defense system," Jake said carefully. "Theoretical only. I'm not planning to use it for anything." Torres nodded slowly. "I've been watching you since the simulation, Morrison. You've changed. Some people think the prince broke your spirit, but I don't think that's what happened at all. What do you think happened?" "I think you learned something important about when to fight and when to wait," Torres replied. "Your father was a military man, wasn't he?" Jake nodded. "Marine Corps. He served in the border conflicts before first contact with alien species. He taught you well. Sometimes the best strategy is to let your opponent think they've won, while you prepare for the real battle." Torres examined. 2 months had passed since the War Games simulation. Jake had settled into his new routine of careful study and secret preparation. Most students at the academy had forgotten about the human who had tried to improve alien technology. Even Prince Zephyr rarely bothered to acknowledge Jake's existence anymore. That changed on a cold Tuesday morning when Commander Torres made an announcement that sent excitement through the entire academy. "The Galactic Defense Council has authorized a special exhibition," Torres announced to the assembled students. "This will not be a classroom simulation. You will be using real ships in actual combat conditions." A buzz of conversation filled the assembly hall. Real ships meant real danger, even with safety protocols. It also meant real opportunity for those who performed well. "The exercise is designed to test new defensive technologies," Torres continued. "Unlike our normal simulations, this will take place in open space using Mark 7 training vessels. Live ammunition will be replaced with energy markers, but everything else will be authentic combat conditions." Jake listened carefully as Torres explained the rules. Teams would defend a real space outpost against waves of automated attack drones. The drones would use actual weapons modified to tag targets instead of destroying them. Any ship that accumulated too many hits would be eliminated from the exercise. "The stakes are higher than usual," Torres said. "The winning team's defensive design will be reviewed by the Defense Council for possible fleet-wide implementation. More importantly for you students, the team leader who achieves victory will receive a full scholarship to the Advanced Strategic Institute." Jake felt his heart racing. The Advanced Strategic Institute was the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. Graduates were guaranteed positions in their species' defense forces or diplomatic corps. For a human, especially one from a working-class family like Jake's, it represented an opportunity beyond his wildest dreams. "Teams will be organized by species," Torres announced. "Each delegation may select their own leader. You have 48 hours to prepare your designs and brief your crews." As students began talking excitedly about the upcoming exercise, Jake noticed Prince Zephyr standing near the front of the room. The Valkyrie noble was smiling confidently, already surrounded by other students eager to be on his team. "I will lead the Valkyrie delegation," Prince Zephyr announced loudly. "Our superior technology and coordination will make victory a simple matter." Several alien students nodded in agreement. The Valkyrie had won the last 3 major exercises, and Prince Zephyr was considered the best tactical mind of his generation. Jake made his decision quickly. Before he could change his mind, he stood up and raised his hand. "I would like to lead the human delegation," he said clearly. The assembly hall fell silent. Every head turned to look at Jake, standing alone among the seated students. He could feel hundreds of eyes watching him, many filled with surprise or amusement. Prince Zephyr's laughter broke the silence. "The failure wishes for another humiliation," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Very well. Perhaps a more decisive defeat will finally teach the humans their proper place in the galactic order." Other alien students began laughing as well. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he kept his expression calm. He had expected this reaction. Commander Torres restored order with a sharp whistle. Morrison, you understand this is a significant responsibility? These ships are worth millions of credits, and the exercise will be observed by senior officials from multiple governments. I understand, sir, Jake replied. Very well. Human delegation leader is Jake Morrison. Felkari delegation leader is Prince Zephyr Colthan. Other species, please select your leaders and report to me within 6 hours. As students began filing out of the assembly hall, Jake found himself surrounded by the other human students. Most looked worried or confused by his decision. Jake, are you sure about this? Asked Ryan Clark, the senior who had led their team in the previous simulation. This isn't like classroom exercises. If we mess up out there, it could hurt humanity's reputation for years. I know the risks, Jake said calmly. Lisa pushed through the group to reach him. Jake, what are you thinking? You know Prince Zephyr is going to try to humiliate you again. Probably, Jake agreed. But this time will be different. How can you be sure? Jake looked around at the worried faces of his teammates. Trust me, I've been preparing for this longer than you know. That evening, Jake called his team together in a private meeting room. The human delegation consisted of 8 students, including Lisa and Ryan. They represented the best and brightest young humans at the academy. Jake stood at the front of the room, feeling nervous but determined. I know some of you are worried about my leadership. After what happened in the last simulation, you have reason to doubt me. It's not about doubt, said Maria Santos, a senior weapons specialist. It's about being realistic. The Velkari have technology we can't match. Their psychic coordination gives them advantages we simply don't have. You're right, Jake agreed. We can't match their technology or their coordination. So we're not going to try. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? Jake activated the room's holographic display, showing a 3D model of the training ships they would be using. The Velkari always win because they fight the way they expect to fight. Perfect coordination, superior technology, overwhelming force. But what if we don't play by their rules? Explain, Lisa said. Jake manipulated the display to show different attack patterns. Human military doctrine is based on adaptability and improvisation. We're good at thinking on our feet and changing tactics quickly. That's exactly what Velkari psychic coordination has trouble handling. But their technology is still superior, Maria pointed out. Their technology is optimized for their fighting style, Jake replied. Perfect coordination requires predictable systems. If we can create chaos in their formation, their greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness. Jake spent the next hour explaining his strategy. It was risky and unconventional, but it played to human strengths while exploiting Velkari weaknesses. By the time he finished, his team was looking more confident. It could work, Ryan admitted, but it depends on our defensive systems performing way above normal specifications. Leave that to me, Jake said. I need one more day to make some modifications to our ship. The next morning, Jake made a request that surprised Commander Torres. Sir, I need permission to install some modifications on our training vessel. Nothing that violates the exercise rules, just some efficiency improvements. Torres studied Jake carefully. What kind of modifications? Adaptive shield systems and improved field generators, Jake replied. All based on standard Academy technology, just configured differently. Torres had been watching Jake closely since their conversation in the maintenance bay. He had seen the young man's secret research and development work. More importantly, he had seen Jake's quiet determination to prove himself after being humiliated. Permission granted, Torres said finally. But Morrison, these ships are expensive and dangerous. Are you absolutely certain about what you're doing? Yes, sir, Jake replied. I've been preparing for this moment for months. Jake spent the entire day working on the training ship. His team helped where they could, but much of the work was beyond their understanding. Jake installed systems he had been developing in secret, integrating them carefully with the ship's existing technology. The modifications looked simple from the outside. A few additional cables, some rearranged components, minor adjustments to the shield generators. But Jake knew these small changes would make a huge difference when the real test began. Lisa watched him work with growing amazement. Jake, this is incredible. Where did you learn to do all this? Books, Jake replied, not looking up from his work. Amazing what you can learn when you're motivated. That evening, the teams gathered for final briefings. Prince Zephyr's Velkari delegation looked confident and relaxed. Their ship gleamed with advanced technology and psychic enhancement crystals. Other alien teams had impressive modifications as well. The human ship looked ordinary by comparison. Jake's modifications were subtle and hard to notice. To most observers, it appeared that the humans were bringing standard equipment to fight advanced alien technology. Prince Zephyr approached Jake before the teams departed for their ships. "I wanted to thank you, human," the prince said with a cold smile. "Thank me for what?" "For providing such an easy victory. My superiors will be impressed when I defeat the human delegation so decisively. It will advance my career considerably." Jake met the prince's golden eyes without flinching. "You're welcome to try, Your Highness." Prince Zephyr's smile faltered slightly. Something in Jake's calm confidence seemed to unnerve him. "Do not mistake my courtesy for weakness, human. Tomorrow you will learn the difference between our species." "I look forward to it," Jake replied quietly. As the prince walked away, Lisa moved to Jake's side. "You're different," she observed, "and calmer. More focused." "I know exactly what I'm doing now," Jake said. "For the first time since I arrived at this academy, I'm completely prepared for what's coming." That night, Jake lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would determine not just his own future, but how humans were seen by the rest of the galaxy. He had spent months preparing. The morning of the war games dawned clear and cold. Jake stood on the observation deck watching 12 ships prepare for launch. Each vessel represented a different species, their crews filled with the Academy's best and brightest students. The human ship looked small compared to some of the others. The Thalorian vessel was covered in thick armor plating. The Zephyrin ship had dozens of small fighter craft attached to its hull. But it was the Velkari ship that drew the most attention. Prince Zephyr's vessel gleamed with polished metal and crystalline formations that hummed with psychic energy. Even from a distance, Jake could feel the power radiating from it. This was technology developed over thousands of years by one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. "Nervous?" Lisa asked, joining him at the observation window. "No," Jake replied honestly. "Ready?" Commander Torres's voice echoed through the station. "All crews to your ships. The exercise begins in 30 minutes." Jake led his team through the corridors to their assigned docking bay. The human ship waited for them, looking ordinary but somehow purposeful. Jake had named it the Phoenix, though he had not told anyone why. The crew took their positions as Jake settled into the captain's chair. Lisa was at communications, Ryan at weapons, Maria at shields. The others manned navigation, sensors, and engineering stations. They were young and inexperienced compared to some teams, but Jake trusted them completely. "Phoenix, this is Control," came Torres's voice over the radio. "You are cleared for departure. Proceed to the exercise zone and await further instructions." "Phoenix copies," Jake responded. "Departing now." The ship glided smoothly out of the docking bay and into open space. Around them, the other 11 vessels formed a loose convoy, heading toward the designated battle zone. Jake watched the Velkari ship through his forward screen, noting how it moved with perfect precision. The exercise zone was a region of empty space, containing a single large asteroid. Attached to the asteroid was a mock space station representing the colony they had to defend. Automated systems would launch attack waves from hidden positions throughout the zone. "All ships take positions around the colony," Torres announced from the command ship observing the exercise. "The first wave will begin in 5 minutes." Jake guided the Phoenix to a position on the far side of the colony, away from most other defenders. This drew curious looks from other teams, but Jake ignored them. He had his reasons for choosing this location. "Jake, we're pretty isolated out here," Ryan observed. "If we get in trouble, the other ships won't be able to help us." "That's the idea," Jake replied. "We're not here to fight alongside the others. We're here to fight our own way." The first wave began with a dozen attack drones emerging from hidden launchers. They moved in standard formation, targeting the strongest defensive positions first. Most teams responded with conventional tactics, forming overlapping fields of fire to destroy the attackers. The Velkari ship was magnificent to watch. Prince Zephyr's crew moved with perfect coordination, their psychic link allowing them to anticipate each other's actions. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, destroying half the attacking drones in the first few seconds. The human ship held back, observing and learning. Jake watched how each team responded to the attacks, noting their strengths and weaknesses. When drones approached the Phoenix, Jake's crew destroyed them efficiently but without showing off. "Easy first wave," Maria commented as the last attackers were eliminated. "They always start simple," Jake replied. "It gets harder from here." He was right. The second wave featured twice as many drones attacking from multiple directions. Several teams began showing strain as their defensive systems were pushed harder. The third wave was even more challenging, with faster, more heavily armed attackers. By the fifth wave, 3 teams had been eliminated. Their ships had accumulated too many hits and were ruled out of the exercise. The remaining 9 teams faced increasingly difficult challenges as the automated systems learned from their tactics. Jake noticed something important during the 6th wave. The Valkyrie ship was still performing flawlessly, but Prince Zephyr's team was beginning to look strained. Their psychic coordination required intense mental effort, and maintaining it for hours was exhausting. "Lisa, open a channel to all remaining ships," Jake ordered. "Channel open," Lisa confirmed. "This is the Phoenix," Jake announced. "I'm reading increased drone activity in sectors 7 and 8. Suggest we coordinate our defensive patterns for maximum efficiency." Several ships acknowledged his suggestion and began adjusting their positions. Jake was quietly taking on a leadership role, using his observations to help coordinate the remaining defenders. Prince Zephyr's voice crackled over the radio. "The human presumes to give tactical advice? How amusing." "Just trying to help everyone survive the next few waves," Jake replied calmly. The 7th wave hit harder than anything they had faced so far. The attacking drones used chaotic, unpredictable patterns that made them difficult to target. More teams were eliminated as their defensive systems were overwhelmed. Now only 5 ships remained: the Valkyrie, the humans, the Thalorians, a Zephyrin vessel, and a team from the crystalline Silthak. The competition was becoming fierce as only the strongest defenders survived. Jake noticed that the Valkyrie ship was beginning to show signs of real strain. Their perfect coordination was starting to crack under the pressure of the chaotic attacks. The psychic feedback from trying to track so many random targets was disrupting their mental network. "Jake, look at this," Lisa said, pointing to her sensor readings. "The Valkyrie ship's shield harmonics are fluctuating. Their coordination is breaking down." "I see it," Jake replied. This was what he had been waiting for. "Ryan, prepare to implement modification pattern Alpha." "Alpha pattern ready," Ryan confirmed. The 8th wave began with a massive swarm of small, fast-moving drones. They attacked from every direction at once, using the kind of chaotic tactics that Jake had studied in the old pirate reports. The Thalorian ship was quickly overwhelmed and eliminated. The Silthak vessel lasted only minutes longer. The Zephyron ship fought bravely but was eventually tagged out by the 9th wave. Now only 2 ships remained: the Valkyrie vessel and the human Phoenix. Prince Zephyr's voice came over the radio, sounding tired but still arrogant. "So it comes down to the superior race against the primitive humans, how fitting." "Good luck, Your Highness," Jake replied politely. The 10th wave was unlike anything they had faced before. Hundreds of attack drones swarmed toward the colony from all directions. The automated systems had learned from observing the previous battles, and were now using the most effective tactics against each remaining ship. The Valkyrie ship fought magnificently, their weapons firing in perfect patterns despite the strain on their crew. But Jake could see that Prince Zephyr's team was reaching their limits. The psychic coordination that gave them such advantages was becoming unstable under the massive sensory overload. "Now," Jake said quietly, "implement all modifications." The Phoenix transformed. Jake's months of secret preparation revealed themselves as his adaptive shield systems came online. Instead of trying to match the Valkyrie's perfect coordination, the human ship embraced chaos and unpredictability. The Phoenix's shields did not just absorb attacks, they learned from them. Each hit made the defensive system stronger and more efficient. The gravitational field generators Jake had modified created pockets of distorted space that confused incoming missiles and energy beams. Most importantly, Jake's crew fought like humans. They adapted quickly to changing situations, improvised solutions to unexpected problems, and coordinated through intuition rather than rigid planning. The very traits that aliens saw as primitive became their greatest strengths. Impossible! Prince Zephyr's voice crackled over the radio as he watched the human ship dance through the chaos of battle. Your technology should not be capable of this. Jake did not respond immediately. He was too busy coordinating his crew's efforts as they faced the most intense attack yet. But as the Phoenix's adaptive shields grew stronger with each hit, he finally found time to answer. You were right about one thing, Your Highness, Jake said calmly. Human technology is primitive compared to yours. The Phoenix spun through a complex maneuver that brought it closer to the struggling Velkari ship. Jake could see that Prince Zephyr's vessel was in serious trouble. Their psychic coordination network was failing under the massive sensory assault. But primitive doesn't mean inferior, Jake continued. Sometimes the simple solution is the elegant one. Sometimes backing down and watching isn't defeat. It's reconnaissance. Then Jake did something that shocked everyone watching the exercise. As the final wave of attack drones converged on both ships, he extended his adaptive shields to protect the Velkari vessel as well. What are you doing? Lisa asked in amazement. Winning, Jake replied, his fingers moving across control panels that responded to human reflexes and intuition rather than psychic commands. The Phoenix's adaptive shields, now protecting two ships instead of one, somehow became even stronger. Jake's modifications had anticipated this possibility. The more complex the challenge, the more powerful his systems became. The final assault ended with both ships surviving, but technical analysis showed a clear winner: the Phoenix's adaptive